To be here with you today. So I'm going to kind of switch over here just to give you the basic information. That's my contact information here, and we'll get started with the rest of the webinar. So for those who don't know, SomerCor, we are a nonprofit lender certified by the Small Business Administration, or the SBA, to service and originate SBA 504 loans. But for a lot of you in the city of Chicago, you may know us as the administrators of the Small Business Improvement Fund, or SBIF grant, as well as the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grant. In general, our mission is to really grow businesses, create jobs, and help with impactful investment in every community. My role at SomerCor really is to be able to connect small businesses, whatever phase they're in, with the right resource. And so if what we're talking about today is not the right capital fit for your business, you still feel welcome to reach out to me, because there are lots of other really great resources in the city of Chicago that might be able to help you where you're at. So I'm going to turn off my video and get started with the rest of the presentation. So let's go over a quick summary of the similarities between the SBIF and NOF grant programs. So both of these programs, as I mentioned, are administered by SomerCor, and they are part of the City of Chicago Department of Planning and Development. Both of them, their goals are really about economic development by providing grants for small businesses to make permanent building improvement costs. Residential costs are not eligible. Additionally, working capital, which would be for things like utilities, inventory, salaries, that is not an eligible use of these grant funds. Additionally, all applicants must fulfill a financial requirement. We want to make sure that everybody participating in the program has a little bit of skin in the game. This means they would have to show proof of financing and contribute a portion of the total project costs up front. This means that both SBIF and NOF are reimbursement grants. Eligible work items for both include things like roofing, facade and storefront, interior build-outs, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and other mechanical upgrades. The goal of this program is not only to support the small business that is actually doing the work, but also to make sure it has a great impact on the business corridor where it sits. Let's talk about the key differences between these two programs to see if you can figure out which one would be a better fit for you. The SBIF program is funded by TIFs, or tax increment financing, and new areas open for application every 30 days. Projects are funded by as reimbursable grant. As we said, you have to pay the cost of construction upfront, and then you're reimbursed afterward for project completion. The geographic eligibility is limited to actually where the TIF district is located. And we have them all over the city on the northwest and south sides. In this instance, the manufacturing industrial projects are eligible, but you cannot do any new construction. The really key difference between SBIF and NOF is that SBIF is a non-competitive grant. This means that all eligible applicants that meet the requirements will receive the grant if there is money available. Comparatively, when you talk about the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, this is funded by a density bonus program for downtown, meaning that if there's new development in the loop, we'll be able to actually earn funds to have the NOF program open. Most projects utilize a construction escrow that includes 3 draws to directly pay contractors, but it is still a reimbursable grant option is still available. But regardless, you will have to be able to put some money down to start the project. The geographic eligibility is limited to targeted commercial corridors on the south and southwest sides, as well as the west side. Manufacturing and industrial projects are not eligible, but new and ground-up developments are eligible. Another key difference here, this is a competitive grant, meaning that applications are judged on neighborhood impact and readiness to put the shovel in the ground and get started. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the SBIF program. Launched in 1999, so now we're celebrating our 25th year. The SBIF program was created to be able to use reimbursement grants for permanent building improvements. Again, SBIF is the program administered, contracted by the Department of Planning and Development, and we have been with the SBIF program since the beginning. When we're talking about the SBIF grant, the maximum amount of grant allowed is $250,000 for an industrial property. It's $150,000 maximum for a permanent single owner, tenant, commercial property, or landlord. Let's say you're in a multi-tenant space. It's going to be $250,000 maximum for that entire property, with $75,000 as the maximum assistance per tenant. You can receive more than one grant. So let's say you apply during one opening and you only want to do maybe the storefront. And then maybe a year later, you realize you could really use a new roof. The district opens again, you would be able to apply. But the key is that once you hit that maximum amount of grant per property, you would have to wait 3 years to reapply again. So while we've talked about the maximum grant amount on the one side, let's talk about, of your actual eligible project cost, how much can actually be reimbursed. Most of our projects are for an applicant that either has less than $3 million in sales or net worth. And in that case, 90% of eligible costs would be reimbursable for a grant. As you can see, we go down 3 to 6 million is 60, 6 to 9 for 30%. For all of our industrial projects, you'll be able to get a grant of up to 50% of the eligible project costs. Now let's see if you are an eligible applicant. Number one, the key is you actually have to have your property in a TIF district where SBIF funds are available, and it's authorized to accept applications. I'll clarify this later on, but just to say again here, if you try to submit a SBIF application for a TIF district that is not open, we will not accept it. We will ask you to wait and reapply when that area is open. For folks that can actually apply, it can be a landlord. It could be a business owner who is either a tenant or actually owns the property itself. If you are a tenant, you would need written approval from your landlord. Additionally, startups can apply, but you would need a business plan, projections, and eventually a City of Chicago business license is required. For applicants, you yourself as an individual and as well as the business, you as a commercial tenant, or if you're owner occupied, you need to average 9 million or less in gross sales per year. For landlords, not only the 9 million or less, you also have to have maximum is 500K in liquid assets per individual. For an industrial tenant, it's going to be 200 or fewer full-time employees. Again, I would say in terms of the 9 million gross sales, pretty much every applicant that we get does fall under that category, but it's always a good thing to know. Please note that if you're owner occupied, meaning both you own the space and you operate your business out of it, you are subject to both tenant and landlord requirements. So we know how much the grant can be. We learned a little bit about the eligible types of applicants. Let's talk about, is your business actually in a SBIF TIF district? So to do that, all you have to do is go to SomerCor.com/SBIF and you click number 1, confirm your business is in a SBIF district. You would then end up at the SBIF locator tool and you enter your address here. Once you enter your address, what will pop up if you are in an eligible TIF district is it will say, yes, you are in this district. It will give you the date of when the next time that they're going to be accepting applications. It will also provide you with contact information for a delegate agency. Delegate agencies are these local entities all around the city that partner with the City of Chicago, as well as SomerCor, to help applicants fulfill their applications, as well as are a great resource throughout the process. I highly encourage you to take advantage of delegate agencies. If you're not sure who the delegate agency is in your area, feel free to reach out to SomerCor and we can help you track that down. So now we know, okay, we figured out whether or not your district or your property is in a SBIF district. Let's find out what the schedule is to see when these projects are actually going to be eligible to apply. So every 30 days is a new period for when the SBIF districts are open for available funds and applications. If you go to SomerCor.com/SBIF, click number 2, it will provide a list of the districts that are open right now for applications, as well as the next month's schedule. We have the entire schedule for 2024 planned. Additional districts may be added to the end if funds become available. But again, If your project or property is in an area that is not scheduled to open, please don't send in the application. It will not be accepted. So once we know for sure, yes, your property is in a TIF district, you are an eligible applicant, let's talk about actually the specific type of businesses and organizations that can apply to take advantage of this program. Listed below are those that are ineligible. Some key ones to notice would be chain and franchise businesses, liquor stores, bars and taverns, hotels, motels, private clubs. If you're a nonprofit with a national affiliation, all of these would not be eligible. This list is not comprehensive, so if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us and we are happy to provide additional information. So if you are an eligible applicant type, let's talk about the types of costs that are eligible for SBIF funding. That's going to be, I think we talked a little bit about it earlier, roof and facade, components of the sign. So we want to make sure that all of our applicants have great signage. While like the specific awning canvas would not be eligible, the infrastructure to hang it from would. Anything that you're trying to make sure you're in ADA compliance, mechanical systems, some architectural construction management fees, any permanent interior renovations, including fixtures, things like that. This list is not comprehensive, so feel free to reach out if you have questions. However, there are some costs that are ineligible for SBIF funding. As I mentioned, that's new construction, so that includes addition, expansions, and ground up construction. Standalone minor repairs or cosmetic improvements. If you are interested in having a fresh coat of paint and flooring on its own, that's not going to be eligible for SBIF. However, if that is part of an interior build out, that would be able to be covered. Equipment related expenses like computer, kitchen appliances, standalone, those would not be eligible. Planters surrounding or fixed to buildings. Another big one not eligible would be outdoor dining and drinking areas, roof decks, beer gardens, patios, things like that. Any fencing, parking lot construction or repair, landscaping, and very critically, any work on interior of residential units. We know that the city of Chicago has a lot of mixed use properties. The mixed use properties are more than welcome to still participate in the SBIF program to be able to do improvements on the commercial side of that property, but we will not be able to do any interior work on residential units. Again, this list is not comprehensive, so feel free to reach out with questions. This is sort of the fun part here. Here are a couple example projects. Right now, this is in the Madison-Austin corridor TIF, and that's going to be Wiley's Chicken and Ribs. You can see that before it was completely empty and the exterior was all boarded up. Now the after, we have the new storefront as well as the entire kitchen interior build out as well as the front of house. So all of this work was eligible for SBIF funds. Another great example, this is actually a landlord example, meaning that a property owner who did not operate a business out of the space applied for SBIF. This is in the 47th and Halsted TIF. And you can see previously it was an auto repair shop, and you can see what the exterior looks like. What a transformation. Now the landlord property here, that what they actually do now is their tenant is a custom cabinetry shop. But obviously this is a really great transformation for the corridor. So if your project would fulfill all these rules for the SBIF program and you're interested in applying, all you have to do is go to SomerCor.com/SBIF and download the application, emailing it to spiff@somercor.com, again, within the designated opening period for your TIF district. So when you apply, all you need is that 3-page application. It's really simple. The city of Chicago really wants to make sure that as many people that are interested in the program are able to apply. But once the application open period closes, the real work begins in terms of vetting all of our clients. And these are kind of some examples of documents that a SBIF project manager from SomerCor is going to ask for. So I actually, in general, always recommend that small businesses have most of these things on hand or easy to access. I think we learned from the pandemic that having your financial documents on hand and accessible really make it quite a bit easier to apply for resources when they become available. Things would be your business tax returns, proof of property ownership, or for those that are tenants, make sure that you have your lease accessible. We want to make sure actually everybody has the projections, business plans. Even startups should especially have them, but existing businesses, they should always have those accessible as well. So again, these are not documents that are required when you submit the initial form, but they're going to be asked for through the process, and it's a good idea to have them ready to go. So this is a quick snapshot of the ideal SBIF timeline. So once the application period closes, boom, what we end up doing at SomerCor is we review the applications. If we have more applications and requests for funding than available, we have a lottery. That's a random drawing to see which order we actually start processing the project applications. So at that point, once we start processing, and you will be contacted by a SomerCor project manager, you will be asked for other documents that we mentioned on the back page, and then also providing site control. Site control means your lease or your deed to the property. You'll have 20 days to complete that. At that point, you'll move into stage 2. This is where you're going to have up to 120 days to provide plans and bids on the type of project and work you're going to do, as well as debts are cured. What I mean by debts are going to be scofflaw to the city of Chicago. That might be water bills, parking tickets, anything like that. We will be running a scofflaw check on behalf of the city of Chicago, and you will have to, during that 120 days, cure that debt. That can either mean paying it outright or participating in a payment plan with the city of Chicago. Once you make it through stage 2, we go to stage 3. Once approved by DPD, you will receive a conditional commitment letter and construction can begin. Any construction or work that you do before you receive this letter will not be eligible for reimbursement. So make sure that you wait to receive this letter. Concurrently with this 120 days, that's when you're going to have to show that you either have your permit or prove a receipt that you actually paid to apply for the permit. And you will have 10 months of construction to be able to do the work. In stage 3.4, that's also during this same time period. You have up to 120 days following the date of the commitment letter to show that you have financing to complete the work. Once the construction is complete, we move into the reimbursement phase. This is when the SomerCor team is going to review your documentation, including statements, invoices, cancel check, waivers of lien. We review, we do a final site visit, and once that is complete and it's sent to the city, within 4 to 6 weeks, you will receive your reimbursement check. Unfortunately, there's always the scary red print at the bottom here, but this is really critical. Unless the Department of Planning and Development has granted an extension, applicants who do not complete each stage within the required time limit will be disqualified and removed from the program. We do encourage all of our applicants to be in touch with SomerCor so that if you are having an issue, you had to change contractors, there's a health issue, something else, a cost overrun, let us know. The sooner we know, the sooner we may be able to help you keep your program and your project on track. Here are some additional resources for applicants that are interested in the SBIF program. This includes design guidelines, as we want to make sure that all of the work that's being done matches the corridors. It also includes SBIF lenders. Now, these lenders are not necessarily, they're not approved by SomerCor or the city of Chicago. However, these lenders have done SBIF projects before, so they understand how they work. We also have a list of contractors of access to all those that are licensed in the city of Chicago. We also have technical assistance providers like architects and others that have done work on SBIF and NOF grants before. So I'm going to actually take a quick pause here, and maybe, Geraldine, if you wouldn't mind reading off any SBIF specific questions. You are more than welcome to continue to put them in the chat box throughout the rest of the presentation. But before we move on to the next grant, I can take a pause here.
Okay, great. Just looking through the questions. See some TIF ones, so I'll wait for that. If it is an apartment building, will this qualify?
Well, so again, we do not do any residential work. However, if it's mixed use, let's say there's commercial on the bottom, an apartment on the top, you will be able to be eligible for SBIF work on the commercial portion of the building. Additionally, we can sometimes help with what we call envelope projects. That might be like the masonry or roofing, of which covers the residential part because it's on top of the commercial space.
Right. What about a nonprofit?
Yes, some nonprofits are eligible. We do encourage those nonprofits, to review sort of the other rules that we talked about. So it can't have a national affiliation. Those would not be eligible, but otherwise they can be. But they're going to be reviewed very similarly to how a small business would be in terms of reviewing their financials. And in terms of actually, as opposed to having business owners that we review their personal financials, it'll be the board members.
Great. If I rent a building and want to convert it to a banquet hall, can I receive funds?
So a couple of things. If you are renting a space, one, you'd have to have your landlord be and they'd have to sign off on whatever work you're doing. It just so happens that startup banquet halls and event spaces are not eligible for SBIF. If it was an existing event space and it needed work, that would be eligible, but not startup banquet halls in that particular case.
Great. Someone's asking to see the example of the work done on the mechanic garage again.
Oh yeah, I can scooch back here. So this was the previous, as you can see, pretty noticeable. And then here is the finished.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Will banks approve loans based off of the commitment letter?
Great question. I would say, and I actually did an event not that long ago with one of our lenders. They won't just approve it off of the letter, but it is helpful to have, and they will need that before they're actually going to do their own underwriting on the loan. But I think, I think it was Wintrust was who we were with, and CIBC is another one that we work with pretty often. And it is helpful once you have the commitment lender. That is something that's helpful to them. Another thing that you can tell your banker or lender that you can actually have what we call a bank assignment, meaning that if it helps the bank feel more comfortable with participating, we can actually make sure that the grant funds, when they're paid out, rather than being paid to you, the applicant, they will directly be paid to the bank to help pay off the loan.
Right. I have my business attached to my home. Would I qualify to receive?
Home-based businesses are generally not applicable. So it really depends on what type of property it is and where, and if it's in a TIF district. So I'd have to learn a little bit more about that. Feel free to send a note to SBIF at SomerCor.com and we can dig in a little bit more on that.
Great. I missed the payment of a project portion. If we personally do not have the capital or partial capital, does SomerCor lend a portion of it?
So we at SomerCor, we do not do any lending necessarily for the SBIF projects. Your goal really has to be being able to have the capital, and that's why we make it a requirement that you have some of the capital up front. Either it's your own capital or you're getting a loan somewhere else. So we can, if you actually are an existing client and are having an issue, please reach out to your project manager. If you're just talking in general, feel free again to send me an email at SBIF at SomerCor.com, and let me see if there are maybe some other resources I can connect you with to make sure you get this financing.
Great. If the map shows that we are in an area that is eligible for funds, but there are no dates for our location at this time, when does that timeline get updated?
Awesome. Great question. So right now we just have the schedule for 2024. There potentially could be additional districts added in at the end of the year, but that will really depend on if we get additional funds. The 2025 schedule will probably be posted sometime around Thanksgiving of this year. But one thing you can do to stay on top of this information is to sign up for our SBIF Graham newsletter. You can do that at SomerCor.com. You can also send an email to us and we can add you to our interested parties list. This list actually says, hey, this is the property, they're in this district, and you will get a personal email when that district is scheduled to open so that you can be prepared with your documentation.
Great, thanks. That's all the specific questions right now, so I think you could move forward.
Awesome, I appreciate it. All right, let's go switch gears into the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. So this program is quite a bit newer. This was only launched in 2016. And really the focus here was to create the vibrant commercial corridors and build wealth on the south, southwest, and west sides of the city. As a reminder, again, residential projects are not eligible. So we have the density bonus program, and that's like how they're actually creating funds for the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. As you probably know, there has been a little bit more of a shift of focusing on some of the Chicago Recovery Plan grants. And so now, though, the goal, I believe, for NOF is they're actually working a little bit now on updating it. And so that the information in this presentation is a little bit vague, but that's on purpose. We're going to be rolling out hopefully a different version of the program, but I'm going to show you some of the core aspects of it here. And the goal hopefully is to have an opening this year towards the late summer, early fall, to be able to have new applicants. But let's talk in general about things that we know are going to remain the same. Eligible projects are going to be for expansion or renovation of existing businesses. It could be a new location for a startup business or an existing business. And it could also be new construction at vacant properties. We're only going to cover the small grants track today, and that means grants up to $250,000. Key here, the difference between SBIF and NOF, this is a competitive selection process based on their application details. And grantees are expected to complete their projects within 2 years. So here are some type of eligible applicants. That's going to be commercial property owners with known businesses. We're not going to allow any vanilla box or speculative projects. Commercial business tenants with landlord approval, and nonprofit organizations providing a revenue generating commercial activity to the public. Things that would not be eligible are residential properties, including home-based businesses and live workspaces. Manufacturing or industrial businesses are not eligible for NOF. Social service organizations, including workforce development, schools, and daycare centers, are not eligible for NOF. Churches and places of worship also not eligible. When we're talking about eligible expenses, I think you will recognize a lot of the notes here. We're going to be talking about major exterior and interior renovations, build outs for businesses, architectural and engineering fees. We've got, the exterior envelope, roofing, masonry, facade, windows, doors, mechanical systems like HVAC and electrical, as well as security systems. Not eligible improvements include things like minor repairs or improvements, working on a residential or the residential portion of a mixed-use building, repairs to address building code violations, and business operating expenses. Let's look at a few past examples of NOF projects. First, AGB Investigative Services here on West 71st and Chicago Lawn. You can see the transformation. I can point out a couple of specific things that really make the improvement. One, getting rid of the glass block windows, obviously, the entire new brick and masonry, really having a clean look, clean signage, open windows. This is sort of the look that we're really going for to improve the corridor. Another example here is Ositos Tap in Little Village. This used to be an abandoned space, and now it is turned into a speakeasy. You can see that the interior was really an amazing build out. So let's talk about in general, the timeline is first 3 to 6 months in general is when you're actually a finalist, you're submitting your project information and finalizing the scope. Once you actually are designated as a grantee, that's when you're working on actual construction and get ready to begin business operations. After you've been an alumni and in the program and maintaining business operations, we ask you to fill out a survey. This is really to help us make sure that future NOF applicants are getting the best that we can give out of the program. But the key about SBIF versus NOF, that in NOF, after the application deadline, all applications are reviewed and prioritized based on project readiness. Are you actually ready to start construction now? Community engagement. Have you actually communicated with community leaders and others to make sure that, one, this is a type of project that everybody wants and needs in the city, and that it will fit in with what the area is really calling for? And then, of course, 3, design. Is the design that you have set up for it, does it match the aesthetic currently of the neighborhood? The number of selected project is based on how much money we actually have in grant fund, and they will be the finalists that are announced. So we really do ask that grantees finish their project within 2 years. If you lose site control, again, site control being you have a lease or your deed to the property, or project delays that will lead to the cancellation of grant awards. Basically, again, we say with SBIF, we say with NOF, let us know what's going on. If you're having an issue and you are not able to meet deadlines, the sooner we know, the sooner that we can work with you to try to help keep your project on track. So it really is critical that you stay in line with the deadlines and you stay in line with the rules. If you don't, you might be removed from the program. So at this point, I apologize for sort of like the hard and fast dates and areas where NOF will be covering. Those are being worked out right now. But I encourage you to go to chicago.gov/NOF to learn more about some of the NOF projects that have already been completed and to stay tuned for additional information. If you're, I have no doubt that once we have more information about what the NOF program is going to look like, there'll be certainly quite a few additional webinars to get applicants engaged and involved. So Geraldine, that's it all I have for NOF. So if there's any NOF specific questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
I see. Are bars and taverns eligible for NOF?
Yes, we did do at this point. Yes, in the current structure you saw, we had Ositos Tap here. And I have a feeling that question was asked because SBIF grants currently bars and taverns are not eligible. We previously, there was a 1 year where they allowed bars and taverns to be eligible. So I know that City Council is reviewing to see if that test was successful and whether or not to make the change so that SBIF can also allow bars and taverns.
Okay, great. This is not just NOF, but it is some stuff that you've been covering. I'm so close to all these districts, yet so far, not quite in it. How are these districts determined?
Great question. So in terms of SBIF districts, SBIF is actually the TIF district, and those are created both with Springfield and with the city of Chicago. If you are so close, but yet so far, the first thing you can do is contact your alderman and let them know, hey, I'm really interested in the SBIF program, but the district just does not include where I am. Is there a possibility of being able to change the geographic area of the TIF district? It is, I would say it is a lift to be able to do, obviously, because there are, both folks in Springfield and the city of Chicago involved. But if you're really interested in engaging, it's worth it to reach out to your alderman for more information.
Great. So for NOF, mental health private practice is not eligible, correct?
Mental health. So that sounds like they would be a therapy business. That would be fine.
Right. Please explain what a social service agency is.
That's a great question. I think that the key here in this definition, I'm going back here. I would actually probably want anybody who specifically had what they think is a social service agency to come, to contact us directly. I think the key is that if you are specifically, contracted by maybe government entities to be able to provide work for or services for the community, that may be sort of what a social services question is. I think that they really wanted to make sure that workforce development agencies as well as schools and daycare centers were not included. So I would have to go back a little bit on that one. You can feel free to send me an email directly, kbrisky@somercor.com, and I can send that over to our NOF project administrator to see if we can get a more detailed answer.
Great, thanks. That's all the NOF questions.
Awesome. So the last portion of the presentation today is focusing on the SBA 504 loan. Again, this is a loan program, not a grant program. And this is also available for businesses in the entire state of Illinois. We also serve businesses in Northwest Indiana and Southeast Wisconsin. So if that's where your business is located, we can help you as well. So SomerCor, actually, in addition to being a grant administrator for the city of Chicago, we are a certified development company, meaning we're certified by the SBA to offer these SBA 504 loans. Like any government loan program, it's named after the section of the legislation where it was created. And this current structure has been in place since 1986. And the real goal is to make sure that small businesses that traditionally were unable to access capital from traditional lending institutions are able to get that capital. But the other really great thing about the 504 program that makes it unique is that it's an economic development initiative, meaning that anybody who's able to access capital through these loans has to be creating jobs as well as supporting other policy requirements like building out corridors or community development initiatives, green energy, or supporting minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. So when we're talking about the 504 program, what can you actually do with the financing? You can use it to buy, expand, or refinance major fixed assets. A fixed asset would be something like commercial real estate, which we've talked a lot about today, heavy equipment, and machinery. And the way this works is it functions as a public-private partnership with three key players. We've got the borrower, you, who typically will only have to put 10% down. A certified development company like SomerCor that covers 40%, and then a third-party lender, a bank or a credit union, that puts down the remaining 50%. Who can use the 504 program? If you're a for-profit business, then we will probably be in business. Right now, the tangible net worth was recently raised, so now that's 20 million, and you're 2 years after average after tax income under 6.5. So when it comes to actually purchasing the real estate, you have to be occupying it and actually running your business out of at least 51% of the space. If you have to be running your business or occupying out of at least 60% if it's new construction. In terms of types of industries, if it's federally legal, these would be eligible generally for the SBA 504 program. We do a lot of manufacturing, healthcare, storage, restaurants, retail, professional services. All of these things can be used for the 504. So why would you want to actually use the 504 loan to purchase and renovate your commercial space? Number one, it's going to be below market interest rates, meaning lower monthly payments. Interest rates are still high, and the 504 effective rate remains below market. Less money down, which I talked a little bit about before, up to 90% financing, meaning you only have to put 10% down, means you get to actually keep more of that money invested in your business. Also, there's long-term financing, so you're not going to have surprise balloon payments. Your term of your loan could be up to 25 years for commercial real estate. And that's really exciting, especially if you are a family business and wanting to create that generational wealth. To be able to have known payments for up to 25 years is a really great benefit. So I talked a little bit about sort of the structure of it. So for businesses, if you're growing, need to expand and renovate, or if you're new and have always been renting a space and are ready to actually buy your own, here's sort of some of the benefits. Again, eligible costs, the land and construction, purchase, building acquisition, fixtures, equipment. Things you cannot use the 504 for include working capital, inventory, vehicles, things like that. So you can see the comparison is that typically for your project, you would have to, if you went through conventional financing, you'd have to put down 25%. With a typical 504 loan, you only have to put 10% down. But let's say you actually already own your own space, but you're interested in making sure you can access some additional capital. This is the one opportunity where you can get some flexible operating capital out of your asset. If you decide to refinance using the 504 program with, you are actually able to take up to 20% of the appraised cash value out for cash out. Things you could use for the cash out include salaries, rent, utilities, inventory, all the things that we sort of talked about that the general 504 loan cannot be used for. Here are a couple Chicago examples who have used the SBA 504 loan. Production Rentals Chicago. This was started in 2016, and they're an event rental supply company. They use a lot for the film and media industries, and they also do events. And a lot of it is just the equipment rental that you might need on a short-term basis. And for a long time, they were just using rental facilities, but their business increased its sales by 60% between 2019 and 2021. And they were like, the next step is we need their own space. And now they were able to purchase the warehouse, and so they can actually grow and build equity instead of paying rent to somebody else. They partnered with SomerCor, and they purchased an over 30,000 square foot building in West Garfield Park. And obviously their plans include some pretty exciting things, hiring more employees and doing more to give back to the community. Another cool example is La Peña Restaurante, which has been around since 2001. And this project is actually a twofer, which is really exciting. They used the SBIF grant and were able to redo the storefront. But in addition, they used the SBA 504 refinance program. They previously had purchased with a conventional loan. They refinanced with us, and now his mortgage payments were cut nearly in half. So if this is something that you feel like you're ready for, you're ready to own your own space, you're ready to roll in any renovation costs into that, or you already own your own space and are interested in refinancing, here are some things that you would need to have prepared. And you're welcome to either contact SomerCor directly or reach out to your business lender. These things might look a little bit familiar to you. This is sort of, I put in the category of small businesses should always have these kinds of things readily accessible. Past tax returns, financial statements, account receivables, projections, those types of things. And this is sort of the rest of our team that handles these financing projects. We actually have our 4 loan officers for the SBA 504 here, as well as Sylvia Orozco, who's our SBIF grant director. She has been with the SBIF program for almost 18 years out of the 25. And so she's very experienced and has seen just about everything under the sun. And Ruben Wadi, who runs the NOF side, who has been with that program I believe for over 5 years now. So we've got a really great experienced team. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm happy to take 504 specific or really any other specific, any other questions. And I will put my contact information back on the screen for anybody else here who has questions for later on.
Great, thank you. Do these loans put any liens on your business or any UCC filings after receiving?
Liens on your business. I'm not sure. I'd have to follow up. Send me a note so I can learn a little bit more about what you're trying to do with your project.
Great. Can the 504 program be used with any other programs?
Yes, it can. We actually have had a couple of clients that it just so happened the timing worked out for them to actually be using a SBIF grant and a 504 loan at the same time. It doesn't always happen that way, but I have with one client, they do commercial landscaping, and they're up in the Kinsey Industrial TIF. And they already applied for SBIF. They were already going forward, but then they actually were approved for the 504 loan. The 504 loan was for the purchase of the building and the renovations. And what they're able to do is do the work and using the loan funds to actually cover those upfront costs. and then they'll be able to get reimbursed from the SBIF program. So the work that they're doing, because I believe it's considered a commercial property, so it will be, they'll get $150,000 back in grant funds because the timing did work out, which is great. Additionally, if you need working capital, so let's say you are purchasing the building and the renovations, and that's a big chunk of the work you're doing, but you also would really like to have some working capital costs, there are other SBA loans that we can point you towards that might be able to meet those needs at the same time.
Okay, great. Online, it shows that the NOF is currently not taking apps. When does it open back up? Apologies if this was already asked and answered.
No worries. It's a great question. The answer is I'm not sure yet. They are still working out some changes to the NOF program to make it more accessible. And so I am thinking that they are shooting for end of summer, early fall. But I would just say stay tuned to the NOF website, and I'm happy to work with BACP as well as DPD to make sure that we have quite a few public events and webinars to talk about NOF once it is getting ready to reopen again.
Great. Can SBIF grant use for 504 purchasing my building?
So the SBIF grant cannot be used to purchase property. The 504 can. So let's say you get the 504 loan to purchase the building, and then you want to be able to do renovations. You can use both of those projects at the same time. But I'm happy to talk more specifically about your situation. If you want to send me an email, and we can talk through that.
Just looking through the questions.
No worries.
Are all these different entities CDFIs?
Oh, great question. We actually are not a CDFI, a community development financial institution. We are just a community financial institution. So we are non-depository, meaning we actually are not necessarily lending out our own money and operating as a bank. So our goal really is, as a CFI, we are doing the 504 loan, the SBIF grant, the NOF grant. We are also potentially going to be doing some more working capital lending, so stay tuned on that. So we're not a CDFI, but we operate in the same family. An example of a CDFI might be Allies for Community Business, which a lot of folks on here may know. They do a lot of working capital and microloan options. So they're a great partner that we work with quite a bit.
Great. Do you need business credit if you are a startup?
Great question. I think the first thing to note about having your credit score is that for businesses, that the most important thing, startup or established, is your personal credit. Your personal credit counts. And so it's not like you can go into a bank and say, I only want to use my business credit to be able to borrow. That's not going to be an option for you unless maybe you're McDonald's. That's kind of size. So personal credit is important. In terms of business credit, as a startup, you don't need to have it, but I think it's a really great thing to actually get started as soon as you can, separating the two. So something like if you're able to get a business credit card, and make sure that when you do, that you're working with the bank to make sure that they're reporting it on your business credit report, and you can ask them specifically to be able to do that. Or maybe it's getting a small line of credit to be able to build up your business credit. So it helps, but really don't forget your personal credit. Your personal credit is key.
Great. They're asking if you could go back to the before and afters with the SBIF, and it's the slide before the mechanic garage. Custom cabinet business, maybe?
So let's see. So this was the SBIF, this example that was Wiley's Chicken and Ribs.
Okay.
And then this was the before of the auto. The after. And I would, is that what they were looking for?
Yeah, it just doesn't, it was changed to a custom cabinet building business. Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what it was, this is a landlord property, meaning they own the property, the auto repair left, And what they ended up doing is if you're a landlord, let's say, you do not necessarily have to have a tenant lined up when you start the work, but you will need to have a tenant, an eligible tenant in there operating, leased up to actually be reimbursed. And so what Mr. Torres did was he did the work and then was able to get in, and I believe it was a custom cabinetry. I think they use it either for a warehouse
Oh, okay.
for their stuff right now. Mm-hmm.
Great. Do you refinance bridge loans for an owner occupied mixed use property?
Refinancing the bridge loan. Well, mixed use property is always tricky. The key would be, do you operate a business out of the commercial space? And is that part of the property over 51%? If the answer is yes to both of those questions, potentially. If the answer is no, then we will not be able to.
Right. How much capital do you have to use of your own for SBIF?
Well, you never have to necessarily out of pocket do any of it. You can get the loan, but you are ultimately responsible for providing the capital one way or the other, through loan or through your own assets, to do the work up front. The good news is this, is if you do not have, let's say, you're going to do $100,000 project, but you don't have $100,000 ready to go, but maybe you have 30,000, right? And what you could do is actually do your project in phases. You talk with your SomerCor project manager and say, hey, I want to get done my roof, I want to get done my HVAC, and I want to get done my storefront, but I only have 30,000. And so what we can do is break it up into 3 pieces. And so, okay, the first thing that you need to do is the roof, because the roof is leaking right now. And you use that $30,000 that you have, complete the roofing project, you submit back to us for reimbursement, and we reimburse you back the money that you just used. Then you're like, okay, now I'm ready to do the HVAC. You do the HVAC, we reimburse you back. And then you can do the storefront. So while, the key is making sure that you do have skin in the game, to be able to do the work, we want to try to get you across the finish line. And that's why we sort of added in the phase element to make sure you don't need to have 100% of the costs accessible to you upfront.
Great. Does your website have a list of those other loans available for small businesses working capital? If so, can you provide the path?
We don't, I don't think I have all of the other like CDFIs and other places you can get working capital from. You can send me a note. I can go back to that, but I'm going to just quick list off a couple of great places that do working capital. Again, that's going to be Allies for Community Business. I would talk to the team at the Women's Business Development Center and Greenwood Archer Capital. Those are all places that are nonprofit lenders and do some type of flexible capital. I know Allies and Women's Business Development Center also do quite a bit of free online business coaching. This could be for online or in person for things like business plans, understanding your financials, all of that good stuff. So again, Allies for Community Business, Women's Business Development Center, and Greenwood Archer Capital are all really great resources to consider.
Great info. If a business just started and haven't done taxes, will they be able to qualify for a grant?
So even if the business is a startup and they're not eligible, like they don't have all of those documents, they can still apply. The key is going to be able that you show a good business plan and reasonable projections. And then eventually you will need to have that Chicago business license, and then you would be eligible to participate.
Great, thank you. If the business has been existing for decades, but you took over as owner less than 2 years ago, do you qualify for the grant or lending?
You certainly can.
Great. Do the 504 finance investment properties for a rental company?
So the SBA 504 is for owner occupied real estate, commercial real estate. It cannot be used for like developments. Let's though say you want to buy a property, you're operating your business out of at least 51% of it, and you have other portion of the building then that you are not operating out of, you can rent that portion out to tenants. But the key though is we want to make sure that somebody who owns that property, a majority of that property, is operating their business out of a majority of that property.
Great, thank you. There is a question. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on BACP's YouTube page. I put it in the chat, but it's www.youtube.com/Chicago BACP, all spelled out. And then there is another question. Did you say you need to attend 6 webinars to gain access to these programs? No, these are 2 completely different programs. City of Chicago, Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, BACP, has an entrepreneur certificate program where if you attend 6 of our webinars, you're eligible for a loan with the CIBC USA Bank. And I could put that information in the chat as well. The SomerCor programs have nothing to do with the certificate program and the 6 webinars. Projection income, there's just a question mark with projection income.
Oh, projections. I guess that is like, so when you're able to actually say, this is how I would actually make money at my business. If you are not sure how to create those, that's a great thing to talk to the team at Allies for Community Business, or other, I think also the Cook County Source is for Cook County. They actually have also their own small business resources that can connect you with other one-on-one business advising. So there's definitely a lot of free resources out there to kind of help get you get those resources together.
Great. Where do we go online to see if we are eligible for 504 property purchases?
There's actually no online site to see if you're eligible for 504 property purchase. For the SBA 504 loan, we at SomerCor serve the entire state of Illinois and then portions of Southeast Wisconsin, Northwest Indiana. However, the entire country potentially you could find somebody like a SomerCor to be able to help you with your purchase. If you are going to try to purchase real estate somewhere not in our service area, feel free to send me a note. I can connect you with a CDC that can help you.
Great. I want to open up an non-for-profit in Austin, where would we also have low-income housing within the building? Which would I apply for a grant or a loan?
Well, in terms of a nonprofit, you are not eligible for the 504 loan, so we can cross that out. For Austin, the key is going to be the housing portion for all the things that we're talking about here will not be eligible for grant financing. So if you're saying you're interested in doing any of the work for the second floor that actually has the residential properties, we won't be able to help with that. If you're interested in applying for a grant to help with the commercial portion for your nonprofit, it really depends on geographic area. A lot of Austin, I believe, was included in NOF. I don't know how much will be included in the new upgraded version, but I would keep an eye on their website to see the final map of the eligibility areas. For SBIF, if you actually put the property into the locator tool, we went here, there's the confirm your business or your nonprofit is in the SBIF. If you go to the locator tool, put your address in there, it'll tell you whether or not that property address is actually in a SBIF district and you're eligible to continue on with the application process.
Okay, great. On your website, I found information about 2 types of loans, SBA 504, SBA 7A. Which would be more suitable for a startup?
Well, it really depends on what you're looking for capital to do. Now, the SBA 7A Community Advantage loan that you found on our website, we're actually relatively small in terms of actually doing that kind of lending. That's for working capital expenses. We don't do very many of those loans. You can also get the traditional SBA 7A loan from a bank. They actually are the biggest 7A lender. Those loans are guaranteed by the SBA. The difference is that you're not going to have nearly the same types of borrower-friendly rates that you would have with a 504 loan. That's because traditionally there isn't a hard asset like commercial real estate or others involved. The other program on there is the 504, and that's for the purchase of real estate. So whether or not you're a startup is less important. It really is, what do you need the capital for, and how much. So that really will really be sort of how we decide what's the best loan product for you. You're welcome to send me a note, and I'm happy to kind of point you in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Just looking through if there's any other questions. The recording will not be available until after the webinar is over, 1 to 3 days after, at youtube.com/Chicago BACP. And I did put that in the chat. I think that is about all the questions. You pretty much touched on every question we had in one
Great.
way, shape, or form. Even if you were while you were talking, I was seeing that you were actually answering the questions that were coming in.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, we'll give everyone one more minute. Lots of thank yous. Thank you. Great information. Very thorough presentation. Loved it. Thank you so much. So I think we are good. Thank you as always for a great presentation. And I want to thank everyone for attending. Again, it will be posted at youtube.com/Chicago BACP. Hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.